The sky was full of colors that no human had ever seen. Shades of purple, green, and gold twisted together like ribbons, and giant winged creatures soared through the air. Their wings were wide and strong, shimmering under the strange sun. They lived in peace, caring for each other and for their land. Today the wind was different. It carried a sound that made the winged beasts stop and look. A small cry came from the edge of the forest. It was soft but strange. No creature of their world had ever made that sound. A group of winged beasts circled above, curious but cautious. The sound came again, louder this time, urgent and trembling. It was a human baby. The winged beasts had heard legends of humans long ago. Stories said humans were gone from the stars, small and fragile but clever and brave. Many had forgotten the tales. But this baby was real. One of the elder winged beasts, taller and slower than the others, bent its long neck and looked closer. Its eyes were wide with wonder. The baby lay on a soft bed of grass and twigs. Its skin was pale and it shook from fear and cold. The elder moved carefully. It had never held a human before. Its claws were gentle, careful not to hurt the baby. The baby stopped crying when it saw the shining eyes above it. It stared at the creature with curiosity. The winged beast lowered its head closer and the baby reached out. Tiny fingers brushed the warm feathers. The elder felt a strange connection, a feeling it had never known. Other winged beasts came closer, surrounding the baby. Their wings made a protective circle around it. They whispered to each other in sounds that humans could not understand. No one knew where the baby had come from. Perhaps the storms had brought it from another world, or maybe the stars had sent it. The elder felt in its heart that the child was meant to be here. They decided to take the baby to the nesting fields, a safe place where the young ones of their kind grew. They flew slowly, careful not to scare the human. The baby looked up at the sky, eyes wide with wonder. The wings above made a soft hum, a music the baby seemed to understand. It stopped crying completely, fascinated by the sight of the giant creatures gliding through the air. The nesting fields were a place of peace. Giant trees with golden leaves stretched high, and pools of clear water reflected the strange sky. Other young winged beasts played and learned to fly. The elders placed the baby in a soft bed of moss in the center of the field. They surrounded it with feathers and blankets, making sure it was warm and safe. The baby looked around, noticing everything at once. The colors, the sounds, the creatures, all were new and magical. It reached out to touch the feathers, giggling softly. The winged beasts watched carefully. They had never seen a creature react like this. It was small, but its mind seemed sharp. It noticed things they never thought a human could see. Days passed and the baby grew. The winged beasts fed it and kept it safe. It learned to mimic their sounds, making small chirps and whistles. Sometimes it laughed, and the sound was like music to the elders. They had never imagined a human could belong in their world. Yet each day it seemed more at home. One night, under a sky full of stars, the elder winged beast bent over the baby. It whispered its name, a long and melodic word that meant starborn in their language. The baby's eyes sparkled, and it made a soft sound in reply. The elders smiled. They all believed that the stars had chosen this child for a purpose. As Starborn slept that night, the wind carried a strange warmth. The stars above twinkled brighter, almost as if they were watching. The winged beasts looked up, feeling a sense of hope they had never felt before. Something had changed in their world. A small human baby had come into their lives, and the future felt larger, brighter, and full of promise. Starborn would not stay small forever. But for now he was safe, surrounded by creatures who would teach him the ways of the world. They would guide him, protect him, and one day he would grow to see the stars not just above, but as paths to great adventures. The first cry beneath alien wings had ended, but a new story was just beginning. Starborn grew quickly among the winged beasts. He could not fly like them, but he ran and climbed with careful balance. Every day he looked up at the sky, fascinated by the moving colors and the stars that shone at night. He liked to lie on the soft grass, tracing patterns with his fingers, imagining lines that connected one star to another. The winged beasts watched him carefully. They had never seen a human think in this way. While they were guided by instinct, by the songs of the wind, Starborn asked questions. He asked why the stars shone, why some birds flew faster than others, and what lay beyond the clouds. Sometimes he asked questions that no one could answer. The elders whispered among themselves, realizing the child was not ordinary. He learned quickly. The winged beasts taught him their language, and he learned to speak it with clarity. He copied their songs and whistles perfectly, even adding little variations that made the elders laugh. Starborn began to notice patterns the winged beasts had never noticed. He drew shapes in the sand and connected them to what he saw in the sky. It was like magic, though none of the elders understood how he did it. Other young winged beasts came to watch him. They were curious about the human who could not fly. Some tried to mimic him, drawing patterns with sticks in the soft ground. The elders smiled, seeing that Starborn inspired others to think in new ways. He did not just belong, he changed the world around him. Starborn also noticed the strange machines the winged beasts had left in hidden places. They were old, from a time before even the eldest remembered. Most of the winged beasts ignored the machines, afraid they were dangerous. But Starborn touched them, pressed buttons and watched lights flicker. He did not break them. Instead he learned how they worked. He realized that with small changes he could make them do new things. At night he climbed the tallest hills and looked at the stars. He mapped them in his mind, imagining paths across the sky. He imagined flying ships that could travel along those paths. He thought of distant worlds and he wondered if humans still lived there. He wondered if anyone else would find him one day. The elders noticed that the sky seemed to respond to him. When he pointed to a star, it shone brighter. Sometimes, the wind carried messages in patterns only he could understand. The other winged beasts did not notice, but Starborn felt it. It made him feel special, but he did not feel proud. He only wanted to learn more. One day, while exploring a hidden valley, he found a crystal that glowed softly. When he touched it, images appeared, other worlds, other creatures and strange cities floating in the stars. Starborn gasped, realizing there was much more to the universe than the nest in the hills. The winged beasts were amazed too. They did not know the crystal existed. Starborn showed it to the elders who studied it with care. It was as if the child had opened a new door to the stars. Starborn also learned empathy and patience. He helped young winged beasts who were afraid of heights, holding their claws and calming them. He listened to the elders' stories of old storms, lost nests and the great migrations of their ancestors. He asked questions not to challenge them but to understand. His mind was sharp but his heart was gentle. Every night, he lay under the stars, imagining the paths he could take when he grew up. He knew he could never fly like the winged beasts, but he could travel in other ways. He could build, plan and guide. He could connect worlds that had never met before. The elders watched him silently, realizing that the child's gift was not in strength or wings, but in vision. When he turned 10 cycles old, Starborn spoke to the Council of Elders. He showed them his maps and drawings, pointing out patterns they had never noticed. He suggested ways to improve the nests, organize the hunting paths, and even communicate with distant planets using signals in the stars. The elders were amazed. Never had a human or any being shown such understanding. At night, the stars shone more brightly over the nesting fields. The wind carried whispers that Starborn could understand, soft messages that seemed to say, "You are ready." He smiled, feeling a strange warmth. He still remembered the first time he cried under the wings of the elders. Now he felt that he belonged completely. The world around him had grown and so had he. The winged beasts looked at Starborn with pride. They had saved a human baby, but they had gained so much more. They had found a child who could see the universe in ways they could not. They had found hope for the stars. And Starborn, the human who could not fly, watched the sky each night, dreaming of all the wonders he would one day reach. Starborn had grown taller and wiser. Though he could not fly like the winged beasts, he moved with confidence. Every morning he ran through the nesting fields, studying the wind, the trees and the patterns in the sky. He remembered the first time he had cried under the wings of the elders and he smiled. That memory reminded him that even a small human could matter. The winged beasts had learned to trust him completely. He helped them organize their hunting and caring routines. He suggested ways to store food and protect the young from storms. The elders watched silently as he worked. They realized that Starborn's mind was different. He did not just see what was in front of him, he imagined what could be. One evening, Starborn climbed the tallest hill and gazed at the stars. He held a small device he had built from the old machines the elders had shown him. Lights flickered on its surface, showing paths across the sky. He imagined sending messages along these paths, connecting worlds that had never spoken to each other. The elders had never considered this. It was new, exciting, and very human. Starborn began teaching the younger winged beasts how to think in new ways. He did not teach them to fly faster or hunt better. He taught them to observe patterns, to plan, and to ask questions. At first, the young ones were confused. Their instincts told them to act, not to think. But Starborn's patience was endless. He explained carefully, repeating lessons, showing them examples in the sand and in the sky. Slowly they began to understand. One day, a message arrived from another region of their world. Strange lights had appeared in the sky, signaling an unknown visitor. The elders were nervous. Starborn stepped forward and studied the lights carefully. He adjusted his device, tracing the paths and predicting where the visitor might land. The winged beasts followed his guidance, moving carefully and silently. When the visitor arrived, it was a small flying machine from a distant planet. The winged beasts were amazed, but Starborn did not hesitate. He approached the machine and communicated using a combination of gestures and sound patterns. The machine responded, opening and releasing messages. Starborn read them and smiled. He had understood their code. The other winged beasts watched in awe. Starborn, a human, had solved a problem they had feared for years. The elders began to speak of Starborn not just as a child, but as a guide. He helped them plan paths across the mountains, routes between the rivers, and signals across the skies. Even though he could not fly, he made the world move more smoothly than ever before. His mind connected places, people, and ideas in ways no one else could. At night, Starborn lay under the stars imagining more. He drew new maps, marking constellations and strange lights he had never seen before. The stars seemed to respond to him. Sometimes, a flicker of light would move exactly where he imagined it. He smiled, feeling that the universe was listening. It was as if the first cry he had made under alien wings had reached across the cosmos, and now the stars were answering. One morning, a group of winged beasts approached Starborn with a request. They wanted him to help them communicate with distant islands beyond the mountains. Starborn agreed, studying the winds, the reflections in the lakes, and the positions of the stars. He built a network of signals using mirrors, lights, and small devices. Soon, messages could travel faster than any beast could fly. The elders were amazed. The child who once cried was now teaching the world to speak in new ways. Starborn's ideas began to spread beyond the nesting fields. Winged beasts from distant regions came to see him. He showed them how to organize, how to connect, and how to listen to the patterns of the world. They left with new understanding and excitement. Stories of the human who could solve problems that winged beasts could not spread quietly across the land. One night, Starborn looked up at the stars and thought of home. He remembered the first time he had felt afraid, lying under giant wings, crying. Now he felt safe, proud, and ready. He knew he would not stay in the nesting fields forever. There were more worlds to understand, more skies to explore, and more creatures to connect. The elders gathered around him. They spoke in soft, melodic sounds, praising his mind and his heart. They admitted that they had never imagined a human could help them see the world in such a way. Starborn listened humbly, knowing that the journey was only beginning. The stars above twinkled brighter, and the wind carried gentle whispers. Starborn closed his eyes and smiled. The stars were listening now, just as he had imagined. And someday the paths he had drawn would reach far beyond this world, touching places he had not yet seen. The human child who once cried among winged beasts was no longer just a child. He was a thinker, a dreamer, and a guide. The universe had begun to pay attention to him, and the adventure of a lifetime had only just started. Starborn had grown into a young man. His small human body could not fly like the winged beasts, but his mind traveled farther than any wings could carry him. He spent his days studying the stars, the winds, and the hidden patterns of the world. Every creature around him had begun to notice that he was special, not stronger, not faster, but wiser and braver in ways no one could measure. The elders often called him to counsel. They asked for advice on storms, migrations, and signals between distant lands. Starborn listened carefully, then spoke with clarity. His ideas were simple but powerful. He suggested ways to share food, coordinate movement, and warn each other of dangers far faster than before. The elders realized that the child who once cried beneath their wings had become the guide they had waited for. One day, messengers arrived from distant lands beyond the mountains. Strange flying creatures and small machines brought letters and signals. They had heard stories of a human who could understand the world in new ways. Starborn studied each message carefully. He smiled as he understood patterns that no winged beast had seen. Then he sent instructions back, helping these distant lands solve problems and connect with one another. The elders watched quietly. They whispered among themselves. The winged beasts had always believed humans were fragile, small, and weak. But Starborn had changed their minds. He was not like other humans, they were gone long ago, but he had the courage, intelligence, and heart to lead in ways the galaxy had never known. The young winged beasts began to imitate Starborn. They practiced planning, observing patterns, and thinking carefully before acting. Starborn guided them patiently. He taught them to ask questions and to imagine worlds beyond their own. Slowly, the islands of the winged beasts became connected, not by strength, but by intelligence and understanding. One evening, Starborn climbed the highest hill in the nesting fields. He looked out at the sky, full of stars that sparkled like diamonds. Each star seemed to call to him, glowing brighter than before. He traced imaginary lines, connecting worlds, and imagining messages traveling along them. The wind carried soft whispers, almost like a voice. Starborn understood. The stars were listening. They had noticed him. The elders gathered around him. They told him the truth. Long ago, the winged beasts had been guardians, waiting for a human to arrive. The universe had chosen this child to guide them, to connect the worlds, and to show that courage and wisdom could change everything. Starborn listened, feeling warmth in his heart. He remembered his first cries under the wings of the elders. He understood now why he had been brought here. News spread across distant lands. Other creatures, humans or not, began to seek Starborn. They wanted guidance, advice, and knowledge. Starborn did not claim power. He refused to take control by force. Instead, he shared ideas, showed solutions, and connected worlds with kindness and intelligence. Slowly, the galaxy began to organize itself around the guidance of one small human. The elders decided it was time to give him a name. Not just any name, but one the galaxy would remember. They chose words that meant Lord of the Stars, a title that reflected both his courage and his connection to the universe. Starborn accepted the name humbly, knowing it was not his strength that made him special, but his mind and heart. That night, the stars shone brighter than ever. Creatures from every corner of the world watched the sky, sensing something new and powerful. The wind carried Starborn's voice across the mountains and valleys. His ideas, his maps, and his guidance reached creatures he had never met. He had become a bridge, a guide, and a symbol of hope for the galaxy. Even with the new title, Starborn never forgot his beginnings. He returned to the place where he was first found, lying in the grass as a small crying baby. He touched the soft feathers that had protected him and whispered thanks. The winged beasts circled above, their wings reflecting the starlight. They had given him a home, taught him, and waited patiently. And now, the human they had saved had grown into a force that could unite the stars. Starborn looked at the sky and smiled. The galaxy had chosen him, and he had chosen to serve it. The stories of a small human who cried beneath alien wings would be told for generations. But for Starborn, the journey was just beginning. There were still new worlds to explore, new creatures to meet, and new patterns in the stars to understand. He had become the Lord of the Stars, not through power but through vision, wisdom, and heart. And in that moment, Starborn understood the truth. Being human was never about strength. It was about seeing possibilities, connecting others, and believing that even one small being could make the universe brighter. Starborn stood at the edge of the nesting fields looking at the sky. The stars shone like never before, bright and clear as if they were alive. He remembered the first time he cried under the wings of the elders. He had been small, weak, and afraid. Now he was the Lord of the Stars. Yet he felt the same humility he had felt as a baby. The winged beasts circled above him, their wings reflecting the light of distant worlds. They had watched him grow, guided him, and trusted him. Starborn had learned from them, but they had also learned from him. Together, they had built a world where creatures of every kind could connect, share, and thrive. The galaxy had noticed. Messages arrived from distant lands, from creatures he had never met, asking for advice, guidance, and friendship. Starborn worked tirelessly, studying star maps, patterns, and signals. He helped new worlds communicate, organize, and solve problems peacefully. His mind traveled faster than any wings or machines. The small human who once cried under alien wings had become a guide for countless civilizations. Yet Starborn never forgot his beginning. Every day he returned to the place where he had been found. He walked among the soft grass, touching the feathers and moss that had protected him. He remembered the warmth, the care, and the patience of the elders. That memory reminded him why he led with wisdom and heart, not with fear or force. One evening, a young human child appeared on a distant world. The child was crying, alone and afraid, much like Starborn had once been. He watched from afar as the child struggled, feeling a strange pull in his heart. The stars seemed to shimmer as if guiding him. Without hesitation, he sent messages through the networks he had built, connecting nearby creatures to help. Soon the child was safe, surrounded by kindness and care. Starborn smiled, remembering his own first moments among the winged beasts. He continued to travel across the galaxy, teaching, guiding, and connecting. He never claimed ownership of worlds. Instead, he encouraged collaboration. He taught civilizations to share knowledge, resources, and dreams. Slowly, the universe began to feel smaller, closer, yet more alive than ever before. The Lord of the Stars was not a ruler in the traditional sense. He was a bridge, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. The winged beasts often followed him, flying alongside his ships and signals. They had become his family. They had given him wings when he had none, and now he gave them a gift they had never imagined. A vision of the universe united by understanding and care. Even creatures who had never met him felt the change. They saw that one small human could inspire an entire galaxy. At night, Starborn would lie under the stars, remembering his first cries. He thought about fear, loneliness, and hope. The stars seemed to respond to him, twinkling in patterns he could understand. He traced imaginary lines between worlds, imagining paths that could bring peace, knowledge, and friendship. Every pattern was a promise that no creature would ever be truly alone. As he looked across the galaxy, Starborn realized something important. Humans were not meant to conquer by strength. They were meant to connect, to imagine, and to create possibilities. That small baby, once helpless and afraid, had grown into a force that shaped worlds, not through war or power, but through wisdom, empathy, and courage. The legends of Starborn spread across the stars. They told of the human who cried beneath alien wings, who grew to become the Lord of the Stars, and who never forgot the feeling of being small, afraid, and in need of care. The story inspired every being who heard it. They understood that even the smallest voice could make the universe listen. In the nesting fields, the winged beasts circled above, singing their gentle songs. Starborn walked among them, smiling. The stars shone brighter than ever, reflecting the light of countless worlds. He knew that the journey would never end. There were always new civilizations to guide, new stars to map, and new patterns to discover. But he was ready. He had wings in his mind, courage in his heart, and hope in his soul. Starborn knelt in the grass and whispered softly to the stars. "I will never forget," he said. "I will always remember the cry that brought me here." The wind carried his words across the galaxy, and the stars twinkled in reply. The human who once cried beneath alien wings had become more than a leader. He had become a symbol, a guide, and a promise that even the smallest life could change the universe forever. And so, Starborn, the Lord of the Stars, continued his journey, not as a ruler, but as a human who believed in hope, connection, and the endless possibilities of the stars. The galaxy listened, and it would never forget the cry that had begun it all.